The unintended listeners. The wind howled across the Antarctic ice sheet like a living thing, rattling the reinforced windows of Research Station Alpha 7. Dr. Sarah Chun pulled her thermal jacket tighter as she settled into her chair at the communications console. The station's isolation was both a blessing and a curse, perfect for deep space monitoring, but lonely enough to drive anyone mad during the endless polar nights. Sarah had been Earth's lead deep space communications specialist for 8 years, and she had grown accustomed to the silence. Most nights brought nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional burst from a distant pulsar. Tonight felt different, though. The aurora danced overhead with unusual intensity, and the station's quantum receivers were picking up strange interference patterns. Another quiet night in paradise. Captain Mike Rodriguez joked as he entered the communications center with 2 steaming cups of coffee. The former military officer had traded his battlefield for this frozen wasteland, serving as the station's security chief. Most people thought his job was pointless. Who would attack a research station at the bottom of the world? But Mike knew that the most dangerous threats often came from the places you least expected. Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully. Actually, I'm getting some weird readings tonight. The cosmic background radiation is shifting in patterns I've never seen before. Dr. Yuki Tanaka looked up from her quantum physics workstation across the room. The young Japanese scientist had been working on experimental faster-than-light communication theories, though most of her colleagues considered her ideas too far-fetched. The aurora activity is off the charts, she said, adjusting her thick-rimmed glasses. Whatever's causing it might be amplifying signals from much farther away than usual. Sarah frowned at her displays. A signal analyzer was showing structured patterns buried deep within what should have been random noise. She increased the gain and applied several filtering algorithms, trying to isolate the source. Slowly, a pattern emerged, too complex to be natural, too structured to be random. Yuki, can you come look at this? Sarah's voice carried a tension that made both her colleagues stop what they were doing. Dr. Tanaka hurried over, her eyes widening as she studied the data. This is impossible. The signal is coming from outside our solar system, but it's too strong to have traveled that far through normal space. Mike set down his coffee and moved closer. Are you saying we're picking up alien signals? I'm saying we're picking up something that definitely isn't from Earth, Sarah replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she tried to enhance the signal quality. The mathematical structure is incredibly sophisticated. It's using prime number sequences as a base, but there are layers of complexity I've never seen before. The 3 scientists worked in focused silence for the next hour, gradually peeling away the layers of the mysterious transmission. What they discovered sent chills down their spines that had nothing to do with the Antarctic cold. It's a distress call, Sarah whispered, staring at the decoded message on her screen. Someone is asking for help. The signal painted a picture of desperation that transcended species barriers. The Zephyrians, as they called themselves, were under attack by something they referred to as the Void Swarm, mechanical entities that consumed everything in their path. Their peaceful civilization had no weapons, no military, no concept of warfare. They had built their society around healing, terraforming, and nurturing life across multiple worlds. Look at these coordinates, Yuki said, pointing to a section of the transmission. They're not calling to us. The signal is aimed at something called the Celestial Council, located in the Andromeda sector. But the cosmic alignment tonight is bending the signal path, amplifying it through our solar system. Mike studied the tactical information embedded in the message. Their situation is desperate. According to this, they have maybe 72 hours before their last stronghold falls. These void swarm things have already consumed 6 of their worlds. Sarah felt a weight settling in her chest. The Zephyrians were describing the systematic destruction of their entire civilization. billions of lives hanging in the balance. Their technology was advanced beyond human comprehension in some areas, but they had no concept of military strategy, no understanding of how to fight back against an enemy that showed no mercy. "We need to contact Commander Park," Sarah said, reaching for the internal communication system. Commander Lisa Park arrived at the communication center within minutes, her crisp military bearing unchanged despite being awakened from sleep. The station director had served in 3 interplanetary conflicts before taking command of Alpha 7, and she understood the gravity of the situation immediately. "Show me everything," she ordered. For the next 2 hours, the team worked to fully decode and understand the alien transmission. The picture that emerged was both fascinating and heartbreaking. The Zephyrians had evolved on a world where cooperation was essential for survival. They had developed incredible technologies for healing, environmental restoration, and peaceful space travel. Their ships could heal damaged ecosystems. Their medical technology could cure diseases that plagued other species, and their terraforming abilities had created gardens of paradise on dozens of worlds. But they had never learned to fight. "Their technology is actually superior to ours in many ways," Yuki explained, highlighting various sections of the decoded data. "They have faster-than-light travel, matter manipulation, and energy sources we can barely understand. But they literally don't know how to use any of it as a weapon." Commander Park studied the tactical situation with the eye of a veteran soldier. "The Void Swarm is using classic overwhelming force tactics. They're mechanical, so they don't tire, don't feel fear, and don't need to preserve resources. Against an enemy that won't fight back, they're unstoppable." "But we can't help them," Mike said, voicing what everyone was thinking. "We're talking about a conflict 23 light-years away. Even if we could somehow get a message to them, it would take decades to reach them." "Not necessarily," Yuki said quietly. "A cosmic alignment that let us hear their signal in the first place. It's a two-way street. If we boost our transmission power and use the same gravitational lensing effect, we could get a message to them in real time." Sarah looked up from her console. "But what message? What could we possibly tell them that would help?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were a small research team at the bottom of the world, completely cut off from Earth's military and government. They had no official authority to speak for humanity, no weapons to offer, no ships to send. They were as helpless as the Zephyrians. In their own way. "We could teach them to fight," Commander Park said finally. Mike raised an eyebrow. "Teach them what?" "How to make weapons they don't understand with technology we can barely comprehend." "No," Park replied, her voice growing stronger. "We teach them how to think like soldiers. Humans have been at war for our entire history. We know strategy, tactics, psychological warfare. We understand how to turn weakness into strength, how to make an enemy's advantages work against them." Sarah stared at the decoded message, reading the desperate mathematical pleas for help. Somewhere, in the darkness between stars, an entire civilization was dying while crying out for aid that might never come. She thought about the Zephyrians' children, their families, their dreams and hopes that would all be consumed by the Void Swarm's relentless advance. "Their technology combined with human tactical thinking," she said slowly. "It might actually work." Yuki was already running calculations on her quantum communication array. "I can modify our transmitter to use the gravitational lensing effect. It will drain our entire power grid, but we could establish real-time communication with them." "Do it," Commander Park ordered. "We're going to answer their call." Mike looked around the room at his colleagues. "Are we really going to try to teach aliens how to fight a war through radio signals?" Sarah smiled grimly as she began preparing. "The transmission array. We're going to do more than that. We're going to help them win." The team worked through the night, preparing humanity's response to a call for help that had never been meant for them. They compressed thousands of years of human military knowledge into data packets, from ancient battlefield tactics to modern psychological warfare techniques. They included everything from Sun Tzu's teachings to guerrilla warfare strategies that had toppled empires. But most importantly, they prepared a message of hope. As the first transmission prepared to launch into the cosmic dark, Sarah felt a profound sense of purpose. They might be just 4 humans in a frozen wasteland, but they carried with them the accumulated wisdom of every soldier who had ever fought against impossible odds. The Zephyrians would learn that sometimes the greatest weapon wasn't technology or superior numbers. Sometimes it was the refusal to give up. The communication array hummed to life, sending humanity's first words into the void. Zephyrian vessels. This is Earth Research Station Alpha 7. We have received your distress call. You are not alone. We are coming to help you fight. In the depths of space, 23 light-years away, those words would arrive in moments rather than decades. And with them would come humanity's greatest gift to the stars, the hard-won knowledge of how to survive when survival seemed impossible. Real battle was just beginning. The impossible response. Response came faster than anyone had dared hope. Sarah's communication console erupted with activity as structured signals flooded through the quantum array. After hours of tense waiting, the Zephyrians had answered humanity's call. The transmission quality was remarkable. The gravitational lensing effect had created a stable communication bridge across 23 light-years of space. Translation protocols are online, Dr. Tanaka announced, her quantum linguistics program working overtime to decode the alien language patterns. They're using mathematical concepts as a universal translator base. Incredibly elegant system. They first translated words appeared on Sarah's screen, and the emotion behind them was unmistakable. Earth entities, your signal has reached us in our darkest hour. We do not understand how you learned of our plight, but we welcome any assistance you can provide. I am Navigator Prime Zelen of the Zephyrian Coalition. Our situation grows more desperate with each passing moment. Commander Park leaned over Sarah's shoulder as she typed humanity's response. Navigator Prime Zelen, this is Commander Lisa. Park of Earth Research Station Alpha 7. We intercepted your distress call by accident, but we choose to answer it by design. We understand you're facing an enemy called the Void Swarm. Tell us about your current tactical situation. The exchange that followed painted a grim picture. The Zephyrians had 47 vessels remaining from their original fleet of over 300. They were making their final stand around their homeworld of Zephyros Prime, using their ship's defensive shields to protect the evacuation of their last major population center. The Void Swarm had grown to over 2,000 mechanical units, each one designed for maximum destruction. We do not understand warfare, Zelen's message continued. Our vessels are equipped with healing beams that can restore damaged ecosystems, terraforming tools that can reshape worlds, and matter converters that create rather than destroy. We have tried using these tools against the swarm, but they seem to absorb and adapt to everything we do. Mike rubbed his chin thoughtfully. They're trying to fight a war with medical equipment and construction tools. No wonder they're losing. But that's exactly what we can work with, Commander Park said, her tactical mind already forming strategies. Sarah, ask them about the specific capabilities of their healing beams and matter converters. The next hour was spent in rapid-fire technical exchanges. The Zephyrians described technology that seemed like magic to human understanding. Their healing beams could restore matter at the molecular level, essentially reversing entropy itself. Their matter converters could transform any element into any other element with perfect efficiency. Their terraforming tools could manipulate gravity, atmosphere, and even time flow on a localized scale. They're not armed with weapons, Yuki realized, studying the technical specifications. They're armed with reality manipulation devices. Sarah was already typing furiously. Navigator Prime Zelen, you don't need to learn how to destroy the Void Swarm. You need to learn how to make them destroy themselves. Tell me about their behavioral patterns. The response revealed the swarm's greatest strength and weakness. The mechanical entities operated with perfect coordination, sharing information instantaneously across their entire network. They adapted to threats by analyzing and countering them, making them nearly impossible to defeat through conventional means. But their perfect coordination also meant they all responded to stimuli in exactly the same way. Classic hive mind vulnerability. Mike observed. They're smart, but they're predictable. Commander Park was already formulating a plan. Sarah, tell them to stop trying to fight the swarm directly. We're going to teach them humanity's oldest military strategy, divide and conquer. What followed was the most intense tactical briefing in human history, conducted across interstellar space with an alien species that had never experienced conflict. Sarah became the voice of humanity, translating military concepts into terms the peaceful Zephyrians could understand. Mike provided practical combat experience, while Commander Park contributed strategic oversight. The key is to make the swarm's coordination work against them, Sarah transmitted. Instead of trying to damage them, you're going to confuse them. Use your healing beams to constantly repair random sections of their fleet. They'll waste processing power trying to understand why some of their units are getting healed while others aren't. Simultaneously, Commander Park added through the communication link, use your matter converters to change the composition of space debris around them. Transform asteroids into different elements, make iron into gold, silicon into platinum. The swarm will try to analyze these changes and adapt to them, but there's nothing to adapt to. You're just giving them an impossible puzzle to solve. The Zephyrians' response was filled with uncertainty. We understand the logic, but we fear harming other life forms. Our healing beams have never been used to confuse or deceive. Mike took over the communication. Navigator Prime Zelen, this is Captain Rodriguez. I've been a soldier for 20 years, and I need you to understand something. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is end a fight quickly. The Void Swarm isn't alive in the way you understand life. They're tools of destruction, and tools don't suffer when they're broken. But more importantly, Sarah added, every moment you hesitate, more of your people die. The greatest cruelty would be to let your civilization end because you were afraid to defend it. The next transmission from the Zephyrians carried a different tone. We understand. What do you need us to do? What followed was the most remarkable military coordination in history. Using their advanced scanners, the humans at Alpha 7 could monitor the battle in real time, guiding the Zephyrians through their first experience with tactical warfare. It was like coaching someone through surgery while watching through a microscope from the other side of the galaxy. Deploy your ships in a delta formation, Commander Park instructed. Not to attack, but to create confusion. Have each ship use different techniques. One ship heals random swarm units. Another transforms nearby asteroids. A third manipulates local gravity. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Void Swarm, accustomed to analyzing and countering threats, suddenly found themselves trying to process dozens of seemingly random phenomena. Their perfect coordination became a liability as they allocated processing power to understand attacks that weren't actually attacks. They're slowing down, Zelen reported, excitement evident even through the mathematical translation. The swarm units are pausing between actions, as if they're thinking too hard about what to do next. Perfect, Sarah replied. Now hit them with the psychological warfare component. Use your terraforming tools to create false sensor readings. Make it look like there are Zephyrian ships where there aren't any, and hide your real ships where they wouldn't expect them. Yuki, who had been monitoring the quantum communication array, suddenly looked up with wide eyes. The power requirements for this conversation are enormous. We're draining the station's entire power grid just to maintain this link. Commander Park made a quick decision. Transfer all non-essential power to communications. Life support to minimum. Research equipment. Offline. This conversation is the most important thing happening on Earth right now. The battle raged for 6 more hours, with the humans providing real-time tactical guidance to their alien allies. They taught the Zephyrians about feints and misdirection, about using enemy expectations against them, about the psychological impact of uncertainty on any organized force. The turning point came when Sarah suggested the most audacious strategy yet. Use your healing beams on each other instead of the swarm. Make your own ships stronger while you confuse them with false repairs. The Zephyrians' ships began repairing and enhancing each other in the middle of battle, their hulls growing stronger, their systems more efficient. Meanwhile, their random attacks on the Void Swarm continued to tie up enemy processing power with meaningless data. The swarm is fragmenting, Zelen reported. Individual units are breaking away from the main force, apparently trying to analyze different phenomena separately. Their coordination is breaking down. Mike grinned fiercely. That's when you hit them with everything you've got. Not with weapons, but with more confusion than they can process. Overwhelm their analysis systems. The final phase of the battle was unlike anything in military history. 47 Zephyrian vessels turned there. Reality manipulation technology into the ultimate confusion weapon. They healed and damaged random targets simultaneously, transformed matter in impossible patterns, and created gravity wells that appeared and disappeared without logic or reason. The Void Swarm, designed to analyze and counter threats, simply couldn't cope with phenomena that had no pattern to analyze. Their perfect coordination shattered as individual units began operating independently, each trying to solve an unsolvable puzzle. "They're retreating," came Zelen's incredulous report. "The entire swarm is withdrawing from our system." "But how? Is this possible? We never fired a single shot." Sarah smiled as she typed the response. "You fought exactly the way humans would fight if we had your technology. You turned your greatest strength, the ability to heal and create, into a weapon that your enemy couldn't understand or counter. But more than that," Commander Park added, "you learned the most important lesson of warfare. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from destroying your enemy, but from making them destroy themselves." The power grid at Alpha 7 finally gave out, and the communication link with the Zephyrians faded to static. But in those final moments of contact, humanity had heard something that made all their efforts worthwhile. "People of Earth," Zelen's final message read, "you have saved not just our civilization, but taught us that there are others in this universe who will answer a call for help, even from strangers. We will remember this debt, and someday we hope to repay it." As the Antarctic wind howled around the darkened research station, 4 humans sat in the emergency lighting and contemplated what they had just accomplished. They had reached across the impossible distance between stars and turned the tide of an interstellar war, not with superior firepower or advanced technology, but with the accumulated wisdom of a species that had learned to survive against all. "Odds, think they'll remember us?" Mike asked quietly. Sarah looked out at the aurora, dancing across the polar sky, its light somehow seeming brighter than before. Somewhere among those stars, an entire civilization was celebrating their survival, and they would never forget the voices from Earth that had guided them through their darkest hour. "I think," she said softly, "that humanity just made its first real friends in the universe." The message hadn't been meant for humans, but they had answered anyway. And in doing so, they had proven that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from being the biggest or the strongest, but from being the one who refuses to walk away when someone needs help. The stars had always seemed cold and distant before. Tonight, they felt a little more like home. Asterisk.